Hello, I'm the Greek Geek because I'm 50% Greek and 100% a geek. At this point in the franchise, they are not just beating a dead horse. The dead horse has been beaten, and now the ghost of the dead horse is being beaten by some guy with a proton pack. Just letting you know that I'm going to cover some spoilers in this movie. I didn't really think that I could cover it without talking about some spoiler aspects of the movie, so just being warned, I will be talking some spoilers.
My name is Sarah Connor. August 29, 1997. It was supposed to be Judgment Day.
So, after the events of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, John Connor is killed by a T-800 Terminator, and it changes what's going to happen in the future. So 20 years later, in Mexico, a lady named Danny is being hunted by a Terminator and is being saved by a soldier who is sent back in time to protect her. Does that sound familiar to anyone at all? They really can't think of anything different than this plot for a Terminator movie, can they? Terminator sent back in time, someone else sent back in time to save them, and that's the movie. They really wish they could think of something different. Terminator Salvation was different, but that movie was just But I did like that opening scene. It really did look like Edward Furlong, and they did a really good job with Sarah Connor looking like she did in 1998-ish, I believe that took place in. So there's that. That looked cool, even though Arnold Schwarzenegger's body looked a bit out of whack, but they used a different stunt double, and it didn't really look like how he did at that time, but close enough.
But I changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives. Enough of a resume for you.
It's great to see Linda Hamilton back as Sarah Connor, and she has aged quite a lot, but then again, I haven't seen her in a movie since 1991, so it's been a while. And she's still the badass character that she was back in that movie, probably even more so with the stuff that she does in this movie. And you can really tell that she is really mourning the loss of John Connor, and she really wants to get revenge, and she is struggling with that. Arnold Schwarzenegger is back as the T-800 Terminator, and he has a family in this. And his name is Carl. He just wanted to find meaning in life, and he found a family, and there is so much wrong with that. Mackenzie Davis is Grace. She is the super soldier that's sent back in time, so she can do more than a regular person. But I didn't really like her character that much. She seemed just too much of an asshole or a bitch or whatever, and she just was quite unlikable to me. But she was good in the action scenes they were in, but as a character, I didn't really like her. Natalie Reyes is Danny, and she's okay. She goes through quite a lot of development in this movie. She goes from essentially transitioning from the Sarah Connor that was in the original Terminator movie, just a regular girl doing her thing, and then eventually becoming a more badass kind of character. She doesn't become a badass character in this movie, but they do hint at that happening in potential sequels that are happening, well, that might be happening if Dark Fate does well at the box office. Gabriel Luna is the Rev 9 Terminator. I liked this concept of this Terminator. It still has the mimetic polyalloy with a metal body underneath, and they can both operate independently of each other, so essentially having two Terminators. Interesting concept, I thought, just combining what we've seen in previous movies and having them being able to separate. I liked that, and I liked how this Terminator was much better, more advanced at being able to infiltrate, being able to convey emotions a lot better, even being able to talk like a regular human, not just stiff and robotic, and being able to have sarcasm and humor and being able to appear very arrogant and that kind of thing.
Expect a big ping, brother. The whole body's a weapon. Sorry.
But even to the point where the Terminator would try and, not monologue, but trying to taunt other characters into doing something stupid at the end of the movie. And I thought that felt out of place because a Terminator would normally, when they see their target, they would just go straight in for the kill, not try and talk. But it's a new Terminator, new model, maybe new tactics, I don't know.
Never seen one like you before.
I really enjoyed the fighting between the Rev 9, Grace, Sarah Connor, and Carl. The fight scenes were quite good, especially the ones at the start where Grace and the Rev 9 are fighting each other in the factory, and then they get away, and then there's that chase scene on the highway. Both of those fight scenes I enjoyed very much. Very good action scenes, very well choreographed, very easy to follow, and just a joy. I was having a good time. But then action scenes towards the end of the movie just got so over the top and dumb and hard to follow. Like, they go from escaping from this police prison where they keep people that are trying to cross the border. They meet up with a military guy in an abandoned warehouse, escape from there, military base, go into a military plane, fly off a military plane that the Rev 9 is piloting, crashes into their plane is falling, they escape by jumping out in a Jeep that has a parachute, it falls onto a dam, they're stuck on a dam, or a hydro plant, whatever you want to call it, they fall into the water, they battle the Rev 9 underwater, escape from that, go into a power plant and fight it in a power plant. And it takes place in the final act of the movie, all of this going on, and you're just like, this is just getting completely ridiculous. I was rolling my eyes by the end of it. And the action choreography was still good by the end fight scene, but it seemed to be a bit harder to follow, and with more characters on screen, it just seemed more of a cluster and hard to follow. And Grace being a super soldier, they established that her metabolism is only geared to be able to do short bursts. But even though she is shown in the final fight scenes to be able to do more than that, but she injects herself with some other stuff and that kind of thing. So they kind of ignore it later on. So I'm like, why bring it up? And that seems like to be a bit of a disadvantage. Having a super soldier but that can only go all out for a few minutes and then they're basically kaput and useless. So that didn't really make much sense to me.
I can see you're very upset. I'm going to help you protect the girl.
It's directed by Tim Miller, who you may know as the director of Deadpool. He hasn't directed much else other than that, so technically this is his second movie, big blockbuster movie that he's directed. He does a well enough job, especially for a second time. The story is by, I'm just going to read it off my notes here, Charles Egley, David Goyer, and Justin Rhodes. Apparently James Cameron was more involved in this movie as well. I don't know how much involvement he actually had. I've heard people say that he's had next to no involvement in the movie and he just threw money at it and that's it. And others say that he was involved with the writing process and even almost took over with the directing duties. So I don't really know which is what happened, but there you go. And with the story, they just seem to want to wipe completely and just start anew, which is what previous movies were trying to do. In the future now, there's no Skynet. It's called Legion, which is essentially the same thing, but with a different name and different robots and different Terminators. So if Skynet never existed, how is there a T-800 Terminator that still exists? If Skynet never existed, then they would have never made a Terminator to send back in time. So Carl shouldn't have been there, and John Connor is less relevant now because Skynet never existed, he never leads the resistance or anything like that, and he just is kind of irrelevant now.
Why do you care what happens to her?
Because I was her.
So, is this movie completely terrible? No, there is some enjoyment to it. I had a good time with the first act, but it all fell apart. Is it that great? No, it's not great, but it's certainly not the worst Terminator movie. Genesis still holds that. So if you want to go see it, go and see it. If you enjoyed Terminator 1 and 2, I do believe that you will get some enjoyment out of this movie. And other parts of this movie, you're going to want to tear your hair out with how frustrating it is. But those are just my thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate. And as always, thank you for listening to me ramble on about a movie for a few minutes. I do appreciate it. Thank you again. I'll catch you next time.